Sebastian Hale didn't expect to be body checked by a woman in heels while sipping his scotch at the most exclusive black tie gala in Manhattan. One moment, he was standing near the edge of the marble staircase at the Astoria Grand, scanning the sea of glittering gowns and tuxedos with calculated boredom. The next, a blur of navy blue satin collided with his chest, and he stumbled back a step, catching her instinctively before she hit the ground. "Oh my God, sorry," the woman gasped, looking up at him with wide, stunned eyes. Sebastian blinked. "Are you okay?" She straightened, her hand still clutching his forearm, cheeks flushed. I didn't see the edge of the step. I was trying to grab a champagne and, well, obviously I failed." Her voice was soft but unpolished, not the usual Upper East Side drawl he was used to, and she didn't reek of desperation or calculated charm like most women here. She was real. "I'm fine." "You're not hurt?" he asked again, this time slower. "No," she said, stepping back, smoothing the front of her dress. "Just my pride." He looked her over quickly. She was beautiful in an effortless way, dark curls pinned in a loose updo, soft brown eyes, and that navy dress clinging to her curves like it had been made for her. But more than that, she looked wildly out of place, and nervous. "First time at one of these?" he asked. Her eyes narrowed just a bit. "Is it that obvious?" he smiled, lifting his glass. "Only because you're not pretending to enjoy it." She laughed, then really laughed, and it hit him like a punch to the ribs. It wasn't forced or flirtatious, it was just honest. "Yeah, I'm definitely not used to rooms like this," she admitted, glancing around at the towering floral arrangements and the rows of Rolexes worn like accessories. "I'm here with my friend Ava. She works in PR and needed a +1. "Lucky for me," he said before thinking. Her brows lifted, amused. "You don't even know me." "I know you tripped into me instead of pretending to care about hedge funds or vintage watches," he replied. "That's already a plus." She tilted her head. "So what do you talk about at these things?" "Usually myself." "But I think I'd rather talk about you." She laughed again, and this time it felt like the whole room faded around them. "I'm Elara," she said, holding out her hand. "Elara Preston. Sebastian Hale." She gave him a once-over. "Should I know that name?" he shrugged. "Only if you care about real estate or luxury hotels." Her eyes widened slightly. "Wait, you're the Hale Group guy, the one who owns half the skyline?" "That's an exaggeration," he said, sipping his drink. "It's more like a third." She stared at him for a second. "And you're just here." "Standing by the stairs like a normal person," he smiled. "I like to watch people who think they're more important than they are." She shook her head, clearly still processing. "Wow. What about you, Elara Preston, who doesn't belong here? What do you do?" "I'm a teacher," she said with a shrug. "Third grade," he grinned. "So you deal with chaos and emotional meltdowns all day, basically the same as running a boardroom." She laughed again, and he wondered how someone so grounded had wandered into this world of egos and champagne. Before he could ask more, a man in a bow tie walked by, bumping into Elara's shoulder and knocking her slightly off balance. Sebastian steadied her again without hesitation. "Let me get you a drink," he said. "One that doesn't come with a side of bruises." She hesitated. "I should find Ava first." "I'll send a search party," he said. "Come on, it's just a drink." She looked up at him, and for a second he saw something flicker in her eyes, curiosity maybe, or the same odd pull he was feeling. "Okay," she said, "but no champagne." "I want something real." He led her to the bar, waving off the line entirely with a nod to the bartender, who immediately handed him a top-shelf bottle without asking. "Perks of being rich," she teased. He poured 2 glasses. "Perks of being bored with people who act rich." They sat near the edge of the ballroom, and the conversation flowed easily. She told him about her students, about the chaos of the school district, how she'd had to fight to get pencils last semester. He told her about building his company from scratch, about growing up in a family that talked more about stocks than feelings. Hours passed like minutes. But then, around midnight, she glanced at her watch and jumped to her feet. "I have to go." "The last train's in 20 minutes. Sebastian stood too. "I can get you a car." "No," she said quickly. Thank you, but I really can't accept that. It's fine, I'll make it. Elara, it was really nice talking to you, she said, flashing him a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Thanks for not letting me fall on my face. Before he could say anything else, she turned and disappeared into the crowd. Sebastian stood there, watching the spot she'd just left, the rest of the room suddenly less interesting. He didn't even get her number. And he had no idea that the woman who tripped into him was the one who would change everything. Sebastian didn't normally attend board meetings in a foul mood, but 3 days after the gala, he was still haunted by the woman who vanished into the crowd like a ghost. He'd tried to shake it off. He'd even gone out with a model who had a name like a perfume brand and the personality of a marble countertop. It hadn't worked. He couldn't stop thinking about Elara, not because she was beautiful though she was, but because she felt like something rare. Grounded. Unfiltered. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, especially not him, and that made her unforgettable. Sebastian, came a sharp voice from across the long glass table. Your thoughts on the Midtown proposal? He looked up, realizing the entire boardroom had gone quiet. A dozen eyes were on him, waiting. I want the numbers rerun, he said evenly. 3 times the projected cost and we're still leaning on outdated traffic data. That's a recipe for disaster. Nobody challenged him. They rarely did, but as the meeting resumed, his mind drifted again. That night, she'd said she was a teacher. He hadn't asked where, he hadn't gotten her last name right. Preston? Pressman? He couldn't remember now. And Ava, her friend, was his only lead. He swiveled in his chair and pressed the intercom. Lena, get me the guest list from the Astoria Grand Gala. His assistant didn't ask why, she never did. Minutes later, he had the list on his desk. Hundreds of names, but only one Ava in PR, Ava Jennings. He leaned back, tapping a pen against his thigh. Jennings worked at a boutique firm downtown. Easy enough. He made the call himself. Mr. Hale, the receptionist stammered. I didn't know you'd be calling direct. Is Ava Jennings in? She's actually out on maternity leave. He paused. Is there someone covering her accounts? Her partner, I believe. I can transfer you. A younger voice picked up. This is Lainey. I need to find someone Ava brought to the Astoria Grand event last Saturday, a guest. Her name was Elara. I believe she's a teacher. Sorry, Lainey said cautiously. We don't give out personal information. I'll double your firm's retainer, he said without hesitation. This isn't business, I just need to find her. A long pause. Then, her name's Elara Preston. She teaches at Westbridge Elementary in Brooklyn. That's all I know. He hung up before he could change his mind. By the time his driver pulled up outside the school the next morning, Sebastian was already regretting the decision. This was absurd, showing up at a public school like some deranged stalker. But something in his gut said this wasn't just curiosity. It was instinct. And his instincts never failed him in business. Inside, the secretary narrowed her eyes. You're here for? Elara Preston, he said. I'd like to speak with her. Briefly, are you a parent? No. Then I'm afraid that's not possible. I'll wait, he said calmly, sitting on the bench outside the office. Nearly 20 minutes passed. Children rushed through the halls, laughter and chaos echoing off the linoleum. Finally, a door opened down the hallway, and there she was, hair pulled back in a loose braid, wearing a cardigan with a cartoon pencil on it and balancing a stack of construction paper in her arms. She stopped mid-step when she saw him. You're joking, she said under her breath. I take it this is a surprise, he asked, rising. You're standing in an elementary school hallway in a 3-piece suit, she said, walking toward him. Yeah, I'd call that a surprise. I didn't get your number, he said simply. I wanted to see you again. She looked him up and down, eyes narrowing. I didn't exactly vanish on accident. I left because I figured you were just being polite. I wasn't. Elara hesitated, glancing toward her classroom. I have 22 kids who will start a glitter riot if I'm gone much longer. Then have dinner with me tonight, he said. Somewhere without overpriced chandeliers, her brow lifted. You tracked me down for dinner. I tracked you down because I couldn't stop thinking about you, he said, voice low but steady. Dinner's just a start. For a long moment, she studied him. "I get off at 4, she said finally, "but I'm not dressing up. And I'm not eating anything I can't pronounce. Done." He didn't smile. He didn't need to. That evening, she met him outside a tiny Italian place in Cobble Hill. No velvet ropes or cameras, just red brick walls and the smell of garlic in the air. "Much better," she said as they walked in. "Do you even know how to order pizza without truffle oil? I'm willing to learn." They sat in a booth by the window. This time, she asked the questions. "What's the last thing you failed at?" He blinked. "Excuse me." "You're used to people being impressed." "I want to know what you're bad at," he considered. "Relationships. I'm terrible at letting people in." Elara leaned back, surprised by the honesty. "Why?" "Because when you build everything from nothing, you get used to expecting it all to fall apart." She didn't speak for a moment. Then she reached for her glass. "That's probably the most honest thing anyone's said to me on a first date." "Is that what this is?" She shrugged. "I haven't seen any glitter yet." "So I'd say yes." They talked until the place closed about childhood mistakes, terrible roommates, and the weird comfort of old cartoons. He didn't notice the time until she glanced at her phone and gasped. "I have to go," she said, grabbing her coat. "My neighbor's watching my dog and she'll start charging overtime. I'll walk you." They stepped outside, the night air crisp. On the corner, she turned to him. "Thank you," she said, "for dinner. And for not being who I expected." Sebastian looked at her, the streetlight casting a soft glow over her face. "Who did you expect?" "Someone who'd forget me by morning." He stepped closer, just enough to feel her breath. "I didn't," he said. "And I won't." Then he watched her disappear again, but this time he knew where she'd be, and he wasn't letting her slip away. Not again. Sebastian didn't know what surprised him more, the fact that Elara had agreed to a second date, or that he was nervous about it. He wasn't used to feeling uncertain. He'd closed deals worth hundreds of millions without flinching. But waiting outside a bookstore in Park Slope on a Saturday morning, his hands actually twitched. When Elara finally appeared, wearing jeans, a faded sweatshirt with a paint stain near the hem, and hair pulled into a messy bun, he let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "You look like someone who doesn't own a single uncomfortable shoe," he said. "I take that as a compliment," she replied, adjusting the canvas tote slung over her shoulder. "And you look like you've never waited in line for coffee." "I haven't," he replied. "But I'm willing to be educated." She led him down the street toward a small cafe that didn't have a website, just a chalkboard sign with the daily specials and a line that curled out the door. Inside, the scent of roasted beans and cinnamon hung in the air. They found a spot near the window, elbows nearly touching as she stirred oat milk into her cup. "So," she said, "do your friends know you're slumming it with a public school teacher today?" "I don't think of it that way." "You don't have to say that," she said. "I'm not offended. We come from completely different planets." "You think I don't know that?" She raised an eyebrow. "Do you?" Sebastian leaned forward. "I knew it the night we met. You're not like anyone in my world." "That's exactly why I wanted to see you again. You barely know anything about me." He gestured toward her tote. "All right, tell me something important." She pulled out a small stack of children's drawings, flipping through them. "These are from my Friday art club. I started it because the school cut the arts budget again. So now I run it with whatever supplies I can buy myself from the dollar store." He studied the messy crayon portraits, the glitter glue stars, the uneven handwriting. "You pay for that out of your own pocket." "I do what I can," she said simply, tucking the drawings away. "These kids don't get a lot of color in their lives. I'm trying to give them a little." He went quiet for a moment. "Where do you keep finding that kind of energy?" She gave a half smile. "You either burn out or you learn how to light your own fire." They wandered afterward, past the farmer's market and down tree-lined side streets. When they passed a small community garden, she stopped. "This used to be a vacant lot," she said. "A few of us in the neighborhood fought to turn it into something better. Now it has tomatoes, herbs, even a peach tree." "You did that too." "I just helped," she said. "It's not about credit." He looked at her then, really looked. You spend your life fixing things other people give up on, she shrugged. I try. They sat in the garden, knees brushing on a weathered bench. A breeze rustled the leaves above them, and for a moment there was nothing but the sound of the city in the distance. Why me? She asked suddenly. You could be with someone who fits your lifestyle, someone who knows which fork to use at a gala, someone who wouldn't panic at the sight of a wine list. He didn't answer right away. Then, because you don't care about any of that. And I'm tired of people who only care about the surface. You're used to being the most powerful person in the room, she said. That doesn't intimidate me. Does that bother you? No, he said. It's the only thing that feels real. She turned her face toward the sun. I don't want to be a project or a novelty. You're not. I mean it, Sebastian. I've seen what happens when people try to straddle two different worlds. One of them always gets sacrificed. He reached for her hand, his thumb brushing her knuckles. Then we find a way to build one that fits both of us. She didn't pull away. Later that evening, as she walked him to the subway, refusing his offer for a car again, he paused at the turnstile. Come with me tomorrow, he said. There's a charity event at the Westfield rooftop. I can get you in. I want you there, she blinked. With your people, the ones who think a donation under 50 grand is an insult, you'll be the only one worth talking to. She laughed once, but her eyes were wary. What's the dress code? Whatever makes you feel like you belong. She tilted her head. You're serious about this? I am. She studied him for a long moment. Then fine, but I'm not wearing heels. Deal. The next night, as the sun sank behind the skyline, Sebastian stood near the rooftop entrance of the Westfield Tower, adjusting his cufflinks. The event buzzed around him, champagne towers, string quartet, and conversations dripping with polished arrogance. But when Elara stepped out of the elevator in a deep plum dress, simple but elegant, with her hair down around her shoulders, the air shifted. She walked toward him slowly, every pair of eyes turning to watch her pass. She didn't shrink from it. She didn't try to blend in. She just existed on her own terms. You clean up all right, he said, voice low. So do you, she replied. Though I miss the bookstore version of you, he offered his arm. He's still here, just wearing a tuxedo. They moved through the crowd together, her hand resting lightly on his sleeve. He introduced her to no one, and yet everyone noticed. At one point, his business partner, Marlene, pulled him aside. She's not like the others, she said, glancing toward Elara. No, he replied, she isn't. Careful, Sebastian. Different doesn't always mean safe. He watched as Elara laughed at something one of the servers said, completely unaware of the eyes on her. I'm not looking for safe, he said. Later, as they stood alone near the edge of the rooftop, Elara looked out at the skyline. Do you ever stop and think about how high up you are? Only when someone like you reminds me what it's like to be grounded. I don't know if I fit in this world, she said quietly. He turned to face her. You don't have to. I'll meet you wherever you are. She looked at him then in a way she hadn't before, like she was seeing something new, something dangerous, something she wanted to believe. But just before she could speak, a voice behind them cut through the quiet. Sebastian Hale. I heard you were making interesting choices lately. They turned to see a woman in a silver gown approaching, her expression sharp with familiarity. Elara's posture straightened. Who's that? He didn't look away. My ex-fiancé, and just like that, the night changed. Elara didn't move when the woman in the silver gown stopped beside them, only shifted her gaze, her spine tall and steady despite the unease tightening her jaw. Sebastian didn't flinch either, though his voice lost the calm weight it usually carried. Vivian. His tone held no warmth. Vivian's eyes flicked to Elara, lingering long enough to make her presence feel like an assessment. I heard you were dating outside your usual radius. I thought I'd come see for myself. Elara looked at her evenly. And now that you've seen, Vivian's lips curved faintly, but there was no humor in it. Now I'm curious. What does a man like Sebastian want with a woman who doesn't come with a legacy attached? Sebastian stepped forward, his voice low. What are you doing here? I was invited, she said, her gaze never leaving Elara. And I had no intention of staying until I saw that you've replaced me with someone who doesn't even know how this world works. Elara didn't blink. You're right, I don't. And I'm not trying to. Vivian tilted her head. That much is obvious. Sebastian's voice hardened. You lost the right to comment when you walked out of our engagement for a venture capitalist in Geneva. Vivian's smile faltered. You always did hate being the one left behind. That's not what this is, Elara said, quiet but certain. This isn't about you. Vivian studied her for a moment longer, then turned to Sebastian. Enjoy your rebellion while it lasts. But you and I both know the novelty always wears off. As she walked away, Elara released a breath. Sebastian looked at her, jaw tense. I didn't know she'd be here. I figured. She paused. You don't have to explain anything about her. I'm not asking for an inventory of your past. I want you to hear it from me, he said. We were engaged. It was strategic, not romantic, and it ended before it began. I didn't fight to keep it because I knew it was wrong. Elara nodded once. I believe you. They left early, avoiding the eyes that tracked their departure. His car waited at the curb, engine low and humming, but when he opened the door for her, she hesitated. I need to say something, she said. He closed the door again, giving her space. I don't want to be a reaction to something else, she said. Not to your past, not to your boredom with your world. If you're with me, it's because I'm enough on my own, not because I'm everything your life isn't. You are, he said, more than enough. And the only thing I'm reacting to is the way I feel when you walk into a room. That's not rebellion, that's clarity. She studied his face in the dim streetlight, then got in the car. The ride was quiet but not heavy. The next morning, Elara opened her apartment door to find a package on her doorstep, no card, no name. Inside was a wooden art supply box, hand-carved, with compartments for paints, brushes, and charcoal. Beneath the lid, a small plaque read, "For your fire." She didn't need a signature to know who it was from. Later that week, Sebastian met her outside Westbridge Elementary. She wore a sunflower pin on her cardigan and had a coffee in each hand. She handed him one wordlessly, then nodded toward the school. They're doing a fundraiser next month, she said. The roof leaks, the library's out of date, we've been begging the district for help, but it's always next year. Tell me what you need, he said. I'm not asking for a check. I'm not offering one, he replied. I'm offering a solution. She looked at him sharply. What kind? He reached into his coat and handed her a folded sheet of paper. It was a conceptual blueprint showing a renovated roof, solar panels, a reading garden, and a multipurpose room. I've already spoken to the board, he said. Quietly, if you're willing to let me help, construction can start over the summer. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. This isn't about charity, he said. It's about putting resources where they matter, and I want to build something with you, not just for you. Elara swallowed. You've been thinking about this. Since the night you showed me those drawings. She folded the blueprint carefully. You're not what I expected either. That weekend, he brought her to a different kind of event. No tuxedos, no string quartets. Just a community cleanup in a neglected park in Queens. He rolled up his sleeves, carried bags of mulch, and helped paint a mural designed by one of her students. Afterward, they lay on the grass, shoulder to shoulder, watching the sky change colors. My father used to say success is measured in square footage and titles, he said. I believed him for a long time. She turned her head. Not anymore. I think success might look more like this. She reached over and laced her fingers with his. 2 weeks later, he stood in front of a press conference, unveiling the new Westbridge Learning Garden, surrounded by cameras and children holding signs they'd made with glitter and hope. He thanked the community, the teachers, the parents, and then he turned to Elara. I came here as a guest, he said, but I stayed because I found something worth building, not a project, not a venture, a partner. She walked to him slowly, heart pounding, as he pulled something from his pocket, not a ring, not yet, but a silver key. To my home, he said, to my life. To whatever comes next, I want you in all of it. Tears filled her eyes not because of the gift, but because of what it meant. She took the key and kissed him in front of the world. A week later, he brought her to a quiet cliffside villa in Italy, his first real vacation in years. No headlines. No meetings, just her. They watched the sun rise over the sea, wrapped in linen and warmth, and for once there was nothing missing, not clarity, not fire, not love, because the man who once believed power meant being untouchable finally understood what it meant to be held. And the woman who once walked into a world that didn't belong to her discovered she'd been the one holding the key all along. The villa overlooked the Amalfi coast, each morning wrapped in sea breeze and lemon blossoms. Elara sat on the terrace steps barefoot, her knees pulled to her chest as she watched the fishermen casting nets below. The sky was streaked with pale gold, and behind her, the scent of strong espresso drifted from the kitchen. Sebastian emerged from the villa in a white shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, his hair tousled from sleep. He carried 2 mugs and handed her one without a word. They sat in silence for a moment, drinking in the view more than the coffee. "I got a call last night," he said finally. Elara turned to him. "About what?" "There's a property in Lisbon, old hotel crumbling, but the bones are good. They want to sell fast. It could be something incredible with the right vision." "Are you thinking of buying it?" I told them no, he said, setting the mug down. "At least not yet." "Why?" "Because I don't want to keep chasing deals just because I can," he said. "For the first time, I'm thinking about what it would mean to build a life instead of just an empire." Elara tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You're really not who I thought you'd be." "Neither are you," he said. "You've made me want things I didn't know I was missing." She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "What if this doesn't translate back home? We're in a bubble here. No boardrooms, no subway delays, no classes to teach. Just sea and silence." "I don't want this to be an escape," he said. "I want it to be the start of something real." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Then let's start making real decisions." Later that day, they drove along the cliffs in a vintage convertible that coughed on steep turns and had a stubborn second gear. They stopped at a roadside stand where an old woman sold hand-woven rugs and jars of fig preserves. Elara bartered in halting Italian, and Sebastian watched her with quiet amusement as she haggled over a clay bowl. "I didn't think you were the bargaining type," he said as they walked back to the car. "I'm not," she said, placing the bowl carefully in her lap. "But she reminded me of my grandmother. She used to sell handmade quilts at the county fair and always said if they pay full price, they don't value the story behind it." "What happened to her quilts?" "I kept one," she said. "The rest were given away before I was old enough to hold on to them." That night, they ate on the balcony under a sky thick with stars. Sebastian uncorked a bottle of wine they'd picked up in a vineyard that afternoon, and Elara set out olives and roasted almonds they'd bought from a tiny market in town. "I've been thinking," she said. "When we go home, I don't want to go back to how things were." "Not completely," he watched her carefully. "What do you mean?" "I want to keep teaching," she said. "But I also want to do more. Start that art initiative we talked about, build something sustainable for other schools." "I know it won't be easy, but I think it's time." He reached across the table, his hand warm over hers. "Whatever you need to make it happen, I'm with you." "I don't want it to be your project," she said. "I want you beside me, not in front." "Then that's exactly where I'll be." The next morning, he surprised her with a visit to a small chapel nestled into the cliffs. It wasn't planned or rehearsed. He didn't have a velvet box or a crowd waiting. Just him and her and the soft echo of church bells in the distance. "I don't have a ring," he said, "because I didn't want to pick something without you. I want us to choose it together, but I couldn't wait any longer to ask." She looked at him, eyes wide. "I've built towers and cities and hotels that kiss the sky," he said, "but none of that compares to what I feel when I look at you. You're my foundation, Elara, the only thing I want to build forever with." Her voice was barely above a whisper. Yes, they didn't rush home. Instead, they extended the trip by a week. driving south through small towns where no one recognized their names and the world narrowed to sun-drenched streets and shared gelato. They picked wildflowers and mailed postcards to her students. She even drew a cartoon of Sebastian in shorts and sandals, claiming it was a rare sighting of the elusive, relaxed billionaire. When they finally returned to New York, the city hadn't changed, but they had. She moved into his penthouse, not as a guest, but as a partner. Her things didn't disappear into drawers, they filled the space with color and life. A mug with a chipped handle joined his espresso cups. A stack of her books leaned against his first-edition collection. Her dog took up permanent residence on the white Italian sofa, and Sebastian didn't even pretend to be annoyed. Together, they launched the Kindling Project, a nonprofit that placed art mentors and supplies in underfunded schools across the 5 boroughs. Elara ran it fiercely and creatively while still teaching part-time. Sebastian funded it quietly, never putting his name on anything unless she asked. One afternoon, as they walked through a sunlit classroom filled with paint-splattered desks and bursts of laughter, she turned to him. "Do you regret it?" she asked. Choosing this instead of another skyscraper, he pulled her close, brushing a streak of blue paint from her cheek. "This is the only thing I've ever built that matters." That winter, they were married in the same garden where she'd once planted tomatoes with her neighbors. No press, no sponsors, just friends, family, and a string of fairy lights wrapped around the branches. Instead of a traditional aisle, she walked between rows of her students, each holding a flower they'd picked themselves. Ava returned from maternity leave just in time to officiate. At the reception, Elara's grandmother's quilt was draped over the back of their sweetheart table, and Sebastian gave a toast that made even the most hardened guests tear up. "There was a time I thought love was a transaction," he said. "But then I met a woman who reminded me that the most valuable things in life can't be bought. They're earned, grown, and fiercely protected." Years passed, and the city changed, but their rhythm remained a balance of passion and peace, challenge and comfort. Sebastian still closed deals and oversaw developments, but he never missed a gallery night at the schools they funded. Elara still taught, even when no one expected her to. And every summer, they returned to the Amalfi Coast where it all began. There on the terrace steps, barefoot and wrapped in sea breeze, they watched the world slow down, not because they needed to escape it, but because they had finally built a life they didn't want to run from, together. Always.